and welcome back to our series of interviews with Euros members and colleagues around the world. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce you to two of my favourite people in Relo, Lena Rekdal and Johanna Lennartson from Nim.Mersion. Nim.Mersion is providing services across Sweden, and so it's particularly fascinating for me to talk to you both because, as we know, Sweden has a unique approach to the coronavirus pandemic. So first of all, how are you both and what's happening?
I'm great. We have taken a different approach than our government, but we'll get back to that. But we're doing really well. We're working remotely, we're learning, and things are really good. Everyone is healthy and things are good.
Great. Johanna, same?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm great. I'm having a wonderful time working from home. The sun is shining.
I'll come back.
Warm enough to sit outdoors. So
the weather has been amazing in both of your photographs, and thank you so much. Both Lena and Johanna sent in the hashtag working from home, Euro working from home pictures, both of which were awesome.
thank you.
In Sweden right now, what restrictions are in place, and are they law or are they advisory? Lena, start.
Yeah, they're all advisory. There is no legislature that enables the government to actually forbid people from doing things, but there are very strong recommendations, and the Swedes are pretty good at listening. We have the travel ban, as the rest of EU, of course. You're not allowed to gather more than 50 people. It started with 500 and it was decreased to 50. And what else? Well, social distances, wash your hands, daily press conferences with good advice. People are very much discouraged from traveling around the country, going to their summer houses for Easter. Some of the ski places, like the one I'm in, actually, it was open up until Easter, but out of courtesy and fear for bringing the virus to this small town and to put pressure on the hospitals here, it was, they closed it actually. And Johanna, anything else that I've forgotten?
Students from the age of 16 approx are studying from home. And there are recommendations that you should not visit your grandma and grandpa and, people above 70. And I think that's basically it.
It's so interesting because, and I'm just about to do some intercultural research on this with Sabine Bayerlocker, because, yeah, I'm fascinated because we've got, on the one hand, how cultures have implemented the rules, and then how those cultures have responded to those rules. I think it says a huge amount, I'm very passionate about Sweden. It says a huge amount about Sweden's culture and the Swedish people that there is a presumption of you're sensible, you take this decision for yourself. That's very rare in what we've seen. Would you say that is the case? People are taking this seriously and doing what you guys are doing, working from home, being responsible?
I think everyone did that to begin with, but you can tell that there are more people on the streets and more people going to cafes, sitting outdoors, having a nice cup of coffee. It's still social distancing and you don't meet a lot of people, but you can tell that it's, people start to move a bit more. And you can also tell from the preschool and schools how many kids there are attending. The first week when all schools in Europe closed, but Sweden was still open, I think that everyone thought that our school would close as well. So in my 4-year-olds group, there were 3 out of 20 children. And in my 7-year-old and her class, they were like half of the students there. And now both groups are almost full. And it's also mandatory between the age of 6 to 16 to attend school in Sweden. So before Easter, almost all schools sent out an email or a note saying that you remember it's mandatory unless the child is ill itself, they should attend school. So no matter if a family member have corona, the child should still be in school.
It is fascinating. It's really fascinating. There's 2 things I'd love to pick up on that. One is that, as you say, there are more people now, outside. The weather is beautiful, obviously.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference, right? And I was talking to Carmelina this morning, our education strategic consultant, and she was saying that people in this country, for example, have been asking, well, why can't I go out for a walk twice a day? What difference does it make? And it's about the density of the population outside. And is that something, I mean, having seen more people gathering, having coffee, is that something that the government is saying, think twice, or?
Yes, the recommendations are still that we should not do it.
It's just so interesting because I talked to, Mima Hillier. I talked to Mima yesterday, and she said, because she lives in a town on the south coast, right on the beach. And she said, the one thing I want to do more than anything is go and sit in one of the beach cafes and have a cup of coffee. So I hope she's not watching this because she'll be very jealous. But tell me, how have your team, I mean, you're all working remotely, right? How are your teams coping, and how did you implement that?
It came, Johanna and I talked about this quite early on, already mid-February. We were quite aware that there was risk with this virus. And we started working with our IT providers to get all the secure lines and everything. And then we actually had a person get sick in the office. And of course, needless to say, we got really nervous. We got very afraid. And we also didn't know if it was Corona, but it was enough for us to really accelerate the whole process of having everybody go home. And we did that in a couple of days. There were some tech issues, but our providers worked through that. So basically, we've been home for 6 weeks.
You really did.
Way before anyone else was worrying about this, we were home.
Yeah, way ahead of the curve. I mean, again, never in my lifetime has technical support been so vital in this time. And our people, when we did this, and I'm guessing it's the same for you, we didn't realize the implications of the difference in security between being at home and being in the office.
Oh, we knew that. We had actually, since both Johanna and I pretty frequently work from home, we knew that. So we had everything in place, but then all of a sudden we had to find out what kind of computers do people have, and also find whatever computers we had in the office that could be moved. And so there was quite a bit of work to make that function. But I have to say, I mean, we must have good broadband, but it's really working well. We haven't had, even I'm in the country, but we have fiber here. It's worked perfectly. And I probably shouldn't say that without knocking on wood.
I've got this wooden ruler I keep on my desk. I'm wearing it down. Thank you so much. We're the same. We're in the country and we have fibre. And I mean, thank goodness, because again, we didn't realise when our IT people were going around, our team's homes, they were even asking about things like your smart lights. Is that password protected? Is your Alexa password protected? Things that we didn't even think about. So very interesting. And how are you all staying positive? You seem really positive, I've got to say.
Well, the first thing we did was to make sure we didn't know where this would end up and if people would get sick. And so what we started doing right away was that we had a good morning call, and where we're like, is everybody okay? How are you feeling? And it took only 1 week until the person who was sick in our office actually recovered enough to participate in these calls. So that was really encouraging. And after 2 weeks, we also knew no one else has been infected, which has been a great relief, I think, because we haven't had to worry about anybody. Everybody is home. Everybody is super careful. Prevention is the best cure. So that has worked really well. And then we also had an late afternoon call where we sort of handed over all cases. We have a little guest here. Du kan peta in ditt huvud här. No. I know, I'm like a BBC person now. But that has been really good, because then twice a day you have a check-in, everybody's feeling well, and if there's a case that needs to be handed over, then it's handed over, so we know that we can supply the services that we have committed to and have promised our clients. So we've had very little to worry about. which has been great. And I think that's why we stay strong and motivated, happy, and
certainly
that has worked for me at least.
A lot of people that I've spoken to have said the same thing, that actually the positivity comes from doing what's needed to be done for the people who really need it to be done. Somebody who's just, you're the experts in this. It's traumatic enough to move from one country to another at the best of times, but to do it in the middle of a global pandemic, that's pretty scary. So what is the situation for you as entrepreneurs running Nim.Mersion in terms of any support from the Swedish government?
The government has rolled out a number of relief programs. And it was very clear very quickly how slim the margins are for the restaurant industry, events, travel. I mean, within a week or two, we actually saw major companies having major problems. And the government went out to save the airlines, to help restaurants, and so they have rolled out short-term work allowance. So people can work 20, 40, 60, 80%. You can't furlough completely as you can in most other countries. And they've also increased the level of support as we have gone along and kind of seen that this is going to take some time, which I don't think anybody really understood or knew from the beginning. There's discussion about rent contributions, especially to restaurants. The hotels are empty. And the whole society has worked really fast to scramble. And what I think is the coolest thing is that SAS obviously had problems, and they laid off 90% of their staff within just a few days from this starting. It was 10,000 people that had nothing to do, but they're highly skilled. They're perfect in the hospitality sector. They're service-minded, and they're really good at safety. So they are helping out in the hospitals. And the restaurants are catering to the hospitals, and people are going to the hospitals, to the parking lot with coffee to give them, and people are crowdfunding and sponsoring food for medical people, nurses and doctors, to help them out. So everybody's rallying around the most important people in the society right now. And I think, and I hope, that we will keep doing that and really understand what an amazing job they're doing and how important it is.
It's impossible to assess what's going to change, but I mean, what has already been seen, across Sweden, across most of Europe, is the way that people are giving anything they can to try and support and to try and do something good. I know that it's interesting to say that the British Airways crews have been setting up first-class lounges in the hospitals to really pamper the nursing staff when they come on shift, which is a lovely idea. I'm just asking again, about Sweden. How is the government responding to things like giving you ideas of when things will start to change?
Well, what they're saying is that since we don't have a lockdown, we don't need an exit plan.
Logical, that has to be said.
So but there's definitely a lot of pressure from companies and all the associations and organizations that deal with companies saying, we need some dates, we need a plan, we need to know when this amount of people are getting better, and then we need to alleviate the restrictions on this, for instance. So there is a discussion about that, but we haven't heard anything firm yet. We were quite disappointed about the travel ban being extended, but we were expecting it, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. Again, this is something I want to look at within this cultural research, because, we were talking within our board earlier, and, the way that countries are dealing with the deadlines. Switzerland, for example, is saying schools will go back on this date, and we're starting to open up these professions on these dates. And in Britain, we're getting nothing, and we are under lockdown. So there's then this big psychological kind of, is it better that people think, okay, next week you can gather in groups of 5? Or will what you said, Johanna, happen, that people will just go, well, if it's going to happen next week, we might as well just do it now. We'll get, very, very complex psychological factors at play within all of this. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you both. I'd love to come back. Oh, and sorry, before I go, are you seeing any research coming out of your health authorities and out of the Swedish government doing any comparisons about whether or not this is better, worse, the same as an approach to other countries?
I think it's too early to say.
Yeah.
I think that time will tell. But I'm very curious to find out. And I hope we are right, of course. But we will see in a couple of weeks or months.
It's very interesting, and like I said, I was talking to Frances Edmonds, and she was saying to me that there is also a huge correlation between, the restrictions that certain countries are under, especially Spain right now, the numbers of deaths from coronavirus, and the psychological impact long term on the population of a really restrictive set of rules like that. So it is going to be very interesting. We'll keep talking about it for years to come, I'm sure.
I'm sure. So we are very lucky to have, our business is still up and running. We can still execute our services. The only thing keeping us is a travel ban that the new hires cannot enter.
Yeah.
But other than that, migration agency are working, most of them from home. Same with the tax office. But it's still, things still works. The housing market is better than ever. It's more properties for rent. Although we see that Swedish companies and especially families home from areas that are, they have a lot of COVID-19, like New York City, Italy, Spain. So some of our clients have to move, but then they have more to choose from when they normally have. So you have to see the positive in all, right?
You do, absolutely. And we're actually talking at the moment, we're putting together a research project for Eura to, we've taken a platform from a group of DSPs in the UK, got together themselves to try and lobby governments, try and lobby MPs, that when the travel bans do end, if there is a phasing in of aviation according to important groups, that assignees are placed in that important group to get economies going again. So we're going to try and get those same figures out to everybody in Eura and then give you back the data to be able to go in and say, look, this industry is worth, the calculation that came out of the UK, which was amazing, was that the industry in its widest form, so corporate housing, hotel stays, real estate, everything, comes to just under £5 billion a year. So that's a convincing figure to take forward the government. So we're going to try and do that for Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Germany, Italy, Spain over the coming weeks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's been so nice to see you. I can't believe we're not going to see you in 2 weeks' time, but we will. We will see you soon. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time. And I'd love to come back to you in a few weeks and see where we are. Hopefully.
We'll be in a better place in a few weeks.
I absolutely agree with you. Positivity and wearing down the ruler. Listen, thanks again. Really lovely to see you guys. Take care, stay well, stay safe.
Take care. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.